Some of you have taken it, so you've seen the survey firsthand. But basically, like, Slash Data is a developer analyst firm, and a lot of what we do is surveying developers, is it custom surveys or in our biannual survey. But to get this kind of 360 view of the space, we also decided to survey the developer program leaders, people like you. So understanding like how your developer programs are run, how you prioritize your work, and justify the value of developer programs. And by taking part in the survey, you also get access to sessions like this to understand the results and things like that. So I'll just give you
Rich, I think we
a little bit more information about Slash Data, just a couple of developers. And we do this through our biannual surveys. We are currently fielding our 24th survey, so we're doing this for 12 years. And we reach over 30,000 developers every year. From this, we do at least 40 research studies, and we use a lot of different partners to get a truly representative sample of our developers. And a lot of our developers come from our own developer community, developer nation community. And from our research, we know that community is important to developers. So the first few slides I'm going to show you here are about developers' views on community based on the results from our most recent survey. So the 24th one is running right now, but the 23rd one closed in August, and this is very hot off the press, basically. You're the first people to see this data. So from our survey, we know that 19% of developers rank community in the top 5 resources that companies should offer to support developers. So, in comparison, like documentation and sample code is often the most important one, and that gets around 36 to 45% of the votes, depending on which survey we look at. So this means that developers rank community as the 7th most important resource overall. So they think it's more important than giving answers in public forums, and only slightly less important than professional certifications. So you can see where community kind of sits in developers' priorities. And if you've seen our developer program benchmarking research, then you should be familiar with the kind of resources that we ask about here. But we know that community is important to developers. And so as part of our research, we also do a deep dive into specific resources. And fortunately, in this survey, we actually did a deep dive into what developers think about community and what they value about communities. So we know it's important to them, but what exactly are they using it for? So we asked them what are the most important factors they consider when they're joining a technology-centric community. And overwhelmingly, the availability of courses and training was the most important factor for these developers. And this was selected by nearly half of them. And so this shows that learning is really a key reason for joining the community. And actually, when we look down at these other important features, we can see how, in one way or another, the most important ones actually support learning. If you have the expert community members, these are people you can lean upon. If you have a large community, this gives you more opportunity to get answers to your questions. Online events are great networking and learning opportunities. So we see that learning is really a key reason. Interestingly, students are the biggest drivers of this. 47% of students selected the availability of courses or training. Professionals, 45%, but hobbyists was a little bit lower at 37%. So we can surmise that actually this kind of learning approach is, most important for students and professionals. And I'm going to put a pin in this bit here, which is the platform the community is based around. So we can see that this is actually, quite far down the list. We're on 7th place here of these features. And I'm going to put a pin in this and come back to speaking about the platform later on. But for now, let's return to our focus on learning. And how community can really help developers in their learning journey. So another question we asked our developers in this survey was we asked this specifically to students. And we asked if they're planning to get involved professionally in software development in the future. And if they are, what do they want to do? So students they're aspiring to solve problems and they want to achieve expert level knowledge as future professional developers. And this data comes from our State of the Developer Nation report, which is something that we published probably in October this year. So if you'd like to read more deeply into the topic of student developers and what they're planning, this is a free publication and I really recommend it. There's some other interesting things on blockchain and programming languages, which you may have seen. But we see that, students for those who want to become professionals, this kind of learning angle is super important. They want to solve problems, they want to become an expert, and students' focus is on learning. And so this means that communities are well placed to serve the needs of student developers. These are people who are entering the development space very early. As I think, sorry, I can't see my screen, but I believe we have an ex-teacher amongst us, so you will know this firsthand. Um, so we can see that developers think community is important. We've seen what they want from a community and got insight into why students specifically could benefit from it. But from our DPL data, our developer program leaders data, we see that vendors also recognize the importance of community. So when we asked what kind of part community plays in the strategy, more than 2/3 say that it's either the most important part or is a key part. And just 6% said it's actually not a part of the strategy at all. So this shows that we're seeing both sides of the coin here. Developers value it. Vendors recognize the value that community can bring because obviously like we know that it can make developers stickier, less likely to churn. It can reduce resources when answering questions, and having a self-serving community brings a lot of benefits. And it's good to see it's recognized in the strategy. And we see this also reflected when we look at the role of the respondents to the survey. Is more than a third identified as community managers. So we're seeing the kind of the organizational importance at a high level, at a slightly lower level here for vendors. But we also asked what kind of size communities. And so here we've split this data by the active and like how many members there are who may not necessarily be active. And most communities are small. Actually, more than a quarter of our respondents reported less than 100 or 100 or fewer active members of their community. But we can see there's well over half certainly have fewer than 1,000 active members. And so with smaller communities, it's really hard to reach a critical mass of action to keep developers engaged. If you think about a community as being like an engine, you have to keep it turning over and keep it running until it becomes self-sustaining. So small communities mean, unfortunately, more work to kind of keep them at this critical mass of engagement. And you've probably done this yourself when you find a community that you think might interest you, and you look and you see the last post was in 2013 and there's been crickets since. So it's important to keep that level of engagement. And it is, driving engagement is one excellent way to help developers get value from their communities. And surprisingly, we also asked developers what would encourage them to actively participate and engage. And you might remember that I asked you to put a pin in the fact that platform wasn't so important when selecting a community. But actually, the choice of platform is important in another way. It's important to help developers get engaged. And this, I see it more as a hygiene factor, really. It's not that the choice of platform is going to incentivize anybody to join, but it better not get in their way of actually making the most of it. So this choice of platform is really important here. And we're seeing here again this getting regular updates. And so apart from these two, actually, we see a strong theme coming through these top reasons for driving engagement, and that is that developers want fun and meaningful activities in their communities. They want interaction with experts, and ownership is also a really common theme for them. A lot of them would like the chance to create content, projects on which they can work together, and a well-defined purpose for the community are all, in these kind of like top group of factors to drive participation and engagement. So that kind of brings us to the end of this whistle stop tour. I've tried to give you a range of data, some sneak previews of data we haven't published yet, some publicly available data, and these fresh results from the Developer Program Leaders Survey. So I believe we'll share this deck with you. When we do, please note that these are links. So if you'd like to join, I'll click on these links in the PDF that we'll send you. And before we finish, I'd like to say a big thank you to our community partners who are AppAssembler, Catchy, Common Room, and ComSor for really helping us kind of like keep this community alive and driving and thriving. And I'd like to leave you with this question, and that is, how can a community tick all the boxes for developers and vendors alike? So thank you for your time. I hope that was interesting.